From Cali to Tally, it's time to wake up. WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source, and this is Wake Up War Chant. Now here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hudjavandi and Corey Clark.
Look at all these haters surrounding me every day. Hating on the baller, but they can't stop my pain.
Wake up! What up, everybody? Last show of the week. Aslan and Corey here for you. It's Wake Up War Chant. Thanks for tuning in. It's going to be a Renegade Express edition of the program. If we could ask you real quickly, perhaps hop on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. We like those. It makes us feel good about ourselves, right, Corey?
It does, man. It does. Sometimes you feel beaten down by this job. Not often, though. I think people are usually pretty nice with us. But it's always good. I mean, wouldn't you like that? If the people that are listening to this, if you worked at a place where people could just review your performance on a daily basis, people you don't even know, wouldn't you want them to be 4- and 5-star reviews? I mean, that's just human nature. And let me tell you this, if I ever meet one of you and you have your own podcast, tell me what it is and I will go rate it and I will go review it and I will give it 5 stars. I promise. Unless you're a competitor. Yeah. We know our competitors listen to our show too. If you're one of them, sorry, it's going to be 1 stars and it's going to be, this is a ridiculous show. Anybody else, if you have your own weird podcast, I promise we'll give you a good review.
I think we should start. I'm going to start doing this now. I know it's this show is being recorded for December 6th, but on the 5th day of every month, I'm going to read the most recent review left for us on iTunes. So
you're not going to remember that. There's no way January 5th you're going to remember to do this.
This one is not going in chronological order for some reason. Most helpful, most recent. That's
there you go.
Here we go. Hey, there we go. Look at that. Caroline Knoll. Yeah, there we go. 5 stars, Corey. Left it on December 3rd. Listening to Corey and Aslan on my 45-minute commute makes the drive go by in a flash. These two are awesome. Corey's sport writer insight and Aslan's quirky commentary is an incredible combo. Must listen for any Seminole fan.
Was that your girlfriend leaving that message?
I don't know. Maybe.
I know that's not her name, but that's an incredible review. People, now you have the blue plate. Now you have the template, blueprint, not a blue plate. You're not looking for a blue plate. Now you have a blueprint, the template of what kind of reviews we're looking for. And that was, I mean, I don't even know if you and I could have written a better review than that.
Yeah. I'm not going to read the one before that.
Nope. Don't need any negativity in our lives, man.
Do that one. Man, get a life, people. Good grief. All right. So Florida State still doesn't have an offensive coordinator, and I'm not saying that in a critical sort of tone. It's only been, 2.5 days as we record this podcast. So nothing new on that front other than it seems Hugh Freeze is still an option, obviously, for Florida State, but there's no thumbs up or thumbs down on that quite yet. So, I mean, there's really not a lot to talk about on that front. I mean, the only thing I would maybe say, I was on a show back in Jackson on Wednesday evening, and they wanted to talk about, obviously, Florida State, Cam Akers, because he's a hometown kid, and Hugh Freeze and kind of my thoughts. And, in Mississippi, he has obviously a checkered sort of reputation because if you're an Ole Miss fan, by and large, you think he's a really good coach. There's some that have the sort of resentment towards him that Florida State fans have against Jimbo. They think that, Jimbo left Florida State in shambles. People think that Hugh Freeze left Ole Miss in shambles because of the whole, NCAA violations and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's accurate, right?
That's fair.
You wouldn't dispute that notion, right?
It's fair. He also gave you some of the best years of your life if you're an Ole Miss football fan. I mean, you got to.
Oh, it's totally. I've always made that argument. It was totally worth it. Like, you got 3 years of you got to beat Alabama twice.
Yeah.
You got to go win a Sugar Bowl for the first time since integration.
Yeah.
All things considered, the cheating was worth it, but they were left in kind of shambles. They lost their quarterback to Michigan. But I mean, when is Ole Miss ever going to be relevant? It's kind of worth it, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs.
Yep, exactly right.
But basically, even the Ole Miss fans and it's funny, there's an old football coach out there that we're friends with, and he's got a really funny accent. But anyhow, he's like, man, let's be honest, man. He's like, Hugh Freeze ain't Knute Rockne. He ain't the best X and O's guy ever. So there's a lot of folks that think, Hugh Freeze really wasn't even that he was overblown. His reputation for offensive prowess is really overblown just simply because he beat Alabama. And listen, I watched him blow games against teams like Missouri, teams like Vanderbilt. So it goes back to the whole thing, though, that every coach other than Nick Saban has their warts. They have their, quote, inexplicable losses. I'm not too bothered. And what we talked about, the host was saying if he was a Florida State fan, he wouldn't be too concerned about the whole NCAA violation stuff because, again, he's not going to be your head coach. He's your offensive coordinator. He'll be here for probably 1-2 years if he ever does come to Florida State, and you kind of get the best out of it. But what do you really expect out of him? I guess we can pivot off of that. But my thing is, I don't know. I'm not the moral compass of the show. You are. You were very eloquently stated your case against Josh Ball coming back to the university. If I had to say my piece on it, I don't know if we'd still have a show. But I told the guy that I worked with in Mississippi, my coworker, when that thing started, not even when it was rolling, but when they beat Mississippi State in 2012, his first year there, they got bowl eligible. Promise you, hand on a Bible. Well, I shouldn't do that. That's not fair. On my grandmother's eyes, I'll do that. I literally said to my coworker,
never heard that one before.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I love my grandma. Who doesn't love their grandma? Grandmas are the best.
No, I just never heard on my grandmom's eyes.
Well, don't you say on your mother's eyes?
I've never heard that phrase, that saying at all.
You never heard, like, on my mother's eyes? Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, come on, man. Get some culture in your life, brother.
Sorry, my fault.
So, anywho, I literally told him this is all going to end because he's going to get busted for infidelity. He was getting way too much he was engaging way too much with female fans on social media, and anytime he was on a booster stop, it was just really good-looking women wanting to be around him, taking photos, and I'm just like, I guarantee you something's going to pop up, and it's going to involve him being, having infidelity with his wife, and that's what's going to end him at Ole Miss. And when it all happened, there was like a text message, and he sent it to me, and it's on my old phone, but he's like, dude, you called it. I don't know, it's not a good thing by any stretch, especially using escorts. I mean, good grief. And I know you've talked about the whole
well, again, let me preface this by saying, again, folks, I might have to give this caution every time we're talking now, but if you have kids in the car that are elementary age kids and you don't want them listening to stuff about escorts, turn it down for a few minutes. Not that I'm going to be talking about escorts for a few minutes, but I was going to say, just you and I talking, two guys talking, isn't it better that it was escorts than like some woman that you actually had real feelings for?
My thing is, he's a holy man. He's a religious man.
Well, that's the issue for sure in my book. It's just the hypocrisy of it. Nobody should hold football coaches to this. They're not monks and they're not saints. They're human beings. And men can do dumb things all the time. It was just the hypocrisy of who he purported himself to be.
Well, my thing is, there's some things that you want to do. Listen, I don't have a wife. I don't have children. If I do have a wife and I do have children,
oh boy,
maybe there's some things that you just don't want to do with your wife.
Sure,
so that's the way I looked at it. That was a
prism
prism I looked through, and I'm like, whatever. It was the hypocrisy of it is what made it really outlandish. On top of the fact that he had the NCAA living in Oxford, Mississippi, for 3 years straight, trying to find him and bust him on something. Ultimately, again, is he going to be the next offensive coordinator at Florida State? We don't know that. There's other names that have sort of emerged. You can check out warchant.com for the latest on that. Gene Williams keeping you posted. That thread has over 125,000 views right now.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's it's been updated a few times, but that's an insane number, and that tells you old Gene Williams knows what he's doing with this business. That's a really insane number. Did you see what I posted? The thread that I started on
I did.
on Wednesday.
I did, Corey.
Did you know those numbers?
Yeah, because
I brought it up. I've said it, but I didn't realize they were even with Jimbo leaving and like Dawsey leaving and Trickett leaving and Charles Kelly leaving. I didn't realize they were still 10th in the country. For people that don't know, I just seen so many threads started about how Florida State wasn't all in on football. And of course they're going to lose to Hugh Freeze because they're not willing to pay the money. And so I just frankly started a thread saying, look, Florida State last year was 8th in the country in money spent on assistant coaches. This year they're 10th. They are not getting lapped by all these other teams. They're ahead of Oklahoma. They're like $100,000 behind Michigan. They spend money. What they got to figure out is to spend it wisely. And obviously, you could make the argument the last couple of years that has not been the case. They have not spent that money wisely at all. But they do spend money on football, and they will continue to spend money on football. And if they lose a bidding war to Alabama for Hugh Freeze, number one, if you're Hugh Freeze, Alabama has you'd rather be the offensive coordinator at Alabama than Florida State. I mean, who wouldn't? That doesn't mean that Florida State's not all in on football. And, maybe Alabama only offers maybe Florida State might even offer him more money than Alabama would. But if you're thinking about your career 5 years from now, right now is the way these programs are situated, of course you would choose Alabama. That again, the Mike Locksley was 3-31. He just got a head coaching job in the Big Ten because he told Tua to throw to their awesome wide receivers. Lane Kiffin's a head coach again after flaming out at USC. Sarkisian, all these guys, they stay at Alabama for a year or two. They get great jobs. So of course, that might be why they lose Hugh Freeze to Alabama if he doesn't come to Florida State. But they are willing to spend money. They're not trying to pay peanuts, and they're not getting off on the cheap. They do spend money, and I think for a faction of Florida State fans, there's this misconception that they're the minor leagues when it comes to spending money.
Well, because you hear things about they can't get rid of, the contract with Jimbo was so bad they couldn't fire Jimbo. They couldn't afford to pay the buyout. Then you have the crazy people that want to get rid of Willie right now, and then people are like, listen, you can't get rid of him right now. It's just way too much money. So when they hear that, they would think that Florida State doesn't have money.
But what school would spend $40 million on a buyout? What school would spend $15 million on a buyout after one season? There might be 4 in the country. And you don't want to spend like those idiots. You don't have the money to spend like those idiots. But that doesn't mean that you're not all in. You're going to give Willie Taggart what he needs. In my opinion. Again, you can't be, Jimbo asked Florida State to keep Charles Kelly away from Alabama and give him a multi-year deal. So then when he wants to fire him, well, now all of a sudden you're asking Florida State to spend $3 million to fire someone, or 2.5, whatever the numbers come out to be, $2 million. And on top of that, go spend another 1.6 on this great coordinator you have. Well, at some point you got to be reasonable. I don't think that means they're not giving Jimbo everything he asked for. He just can't change his mind. He can't change his mind after 3 months and say, no, never mind, that thing that I want. He's willing to, he can kick back some of his salary if he wants. And I saw people on the message board talking about, Willie could take a pay cut if they really wanted Hugh Freeze. I'm like, well, sure, but you have to be smart. You can't be irresponsible when you're at a place like Florida State.
Yeah,
you can be irresponsible at A&M,
right? In
LSU, you can't be irresponsible at Florida State.
Yeah, the one thing I do wonder is, when you see the USA Today coaches salary database, it shows you how much they're making, and it's certain amount is bonus driven, incentive driven, some of it's base salary. I wonder how much of the numbers that we do see in terms of coaching staff. I mean, the salary pool for the coaching staff, like you said, it's legit. Florida State's top 10 in the nation when it comes to the amount of money they have available to hire assistant
for
coaches.
People, it's like, I think it was like $5.8 million.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $580,000 per coach.
I wonder how much of the, the polo mafia that Nick has and these other schools have. Like, I wonder how much that's like the hidden dollars, the hidden value that maybe Florida State doesn't have, that, A&M's got the 20 assistant coaches and Butch Jones and all that sort of stuff. Because I don't think that stuff, the analyst money, I don't think is built in to the assistant salary.
Oh, there's no way it is, because I think Alabama's total assistant pool for their on-field, their 10 assistant coaches, I think was only like 6.1, and Florida State's was 5.8. But yeah, Alabama's got 30 quality control assistants. Again, but what can Florida State do? You either have the revenue or you don't. You have the money or you don't. There's only 9 schools in the country that spend more than Florida State. And I mean, and I'm talking about like overall, Florida State is on par with just about everybody it needs to be on par with. It can't compete with that kind of stuff. It can't spend another $2 million on quality control assistants. It just doesn't have that money until the ACC network becomes this juggernaut. Then we're all going to be making money, Aslan. It's going to be hand over fist. It's going to be flooding down to all of us. This show will probably be on the ACC network.
I think people then pivot off of that and say, well, listen, we don't need the best softball coach in the nation or the best soccer coach in the nation or a new scoreboard for the softball field. Why doesn't that money go towards football? That's what those people, that's their whole argument, I think.
So Cimarral makes, I think, like $800,000, which is a lot of money for a women's assistant coach. Well, if you're going to get anybody that's even if you're going to get any
head coach,
just
head coach.
Going rate, you could say, okay, 300,000, 400,000. Well, I mean, that money isn't breaking you. The money you're paying Krikorian isn't breaking you. You're still, the vast majority of your money is going to football. They've got to spend smarter. And, maybe you weigh, and again, I'm just throwing this out there. Odell Higgins has to be the highest paid defensive tackles coach in the country. Probably by 40%. He's been here a while. He's gotten a lot of raises. Every time they've gotten raises, he makes a lot of money, and I'm not saying he's not worth it. He is. Heck, he's the only undefeated head coach in Florida State history.
Whoop, whoop.
But at a place like let's say Clemson, they'll pay Venables $1.7 million. Well, man, your D tackles coach or your defensive line coach is making $200,000. Florida State, all their coaches make a range from about $400,000 to $1 million, right in there. They're all paid kind of equally, and that's kind of the way Jimbo wanted it. That's how he stacked it. So that's the blueprint that Jimbo wanted. He didn't need a $1.9 million coordinator. He had everybody around the same. Well, maybe they switched that up now. I think when Willie took over, it was more of the same. He paid, I think Walt was making, $700,000? Barnett was making a million, right at $1 million. Maybe he goes and says, all right, if I'm firing my special teams coach or I'm reassigning him, maybe instead of my special teams coach making $410,000, he's making $180,000. And that's an extra $230,000 I'm giving to my OC. So now you're almost up to $1 million right there. And maybe we whittle Odell's salary some. Maybe we whittle this guy's salary some. Maybe we whittle that guy's salary some. The point is, they're not, the pool that they're spending on their 10 assistants is roughly in play with everyone, all the big boys in the country. They just spend it differently. Clemson spends 1.7 on one coach. Florida State doesn't do that. But maybe they should. I'm not saying what they're doing is right or wrong, but, well, I guess you could say it's wrong because it's certainly not working here lately.
Let's get to the questions here soon. Only thing I want to say last.
What would you, as a Florida State fan, what would be too much for Hugh Freeze for you?
For me, man, if anything above 1.7.
So you'd be good with 1.6 for Hugh Freeze?
Yes.
All right.
Got to, right? I mean, but then I don't know. I mean, he comes here, he does really well for, they're 8-5 next year, which is good. It's an improvement, but he's not going to stay here for the long term. And then where do you go from there? Then who fills in that? Well, again,
like we talked
chair?
About yesterday, you just got to get that boulder rolling downhill. And number one, there's no guarantee that he would do it, that he would be the guy that pushed it, got it going rolling. But also, I don't think he'd be here for just a year. I don't think 1 year at Florida State with a decent offense is that dude's got a lot of baggage. And what would you leave the Florida State offensive coordinator position for?
Head coach at Auburn?
Right. But do you think a school that Hugh Freeze would be interested in actually being the head coach for would be willing to bring him back so soon?
Absolutely. It would be 3 years. Somewhere like Auburn, if Gus Malzahn goes 8-5 next year.
I get. But the only way Hugh Freeze won was he cheated his balls off.
But you have to do that at Ole
Miss. That's a concern,
Auburn,
right?
At Auburn, they're more seasoned on that. At Ole Miss, they didn't know how to cheat without being stupid.
Well, that's true.
But the one thing I did want to mention, just in terms of Saban and what he does for people, I think Mel Tucker is now the 10th assistant for Saban just in his tenure at Alabama. I think Bruce Feldman tweeted it out. The 10th assistant just in Saban's tenure at Alabama that's now gone on to be a head coach. Dude, you talk about spending smarter. I guess obviously Mel Tucker's never had a head coaching job, but Mel Tucker's been he's been part of a coaching staff at Alabama. I'm pretty sure he's a defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears a few years ago, and then now at Georgia. He signed a 5-year deal with Colorado for less than $3 million a season. It's bizarre that Willie went from making 3, maybe a little bit under, I don't know if he's under 3 or a little bit over 3 to Oregon to I don't know. Florida State was put in had no leverage and was put in such a bad position with the way Jimbo left that they had to throw so much money at Willie. I don't know how much. There's a lot of things that people factor in for their disappointment in Willie Taggart. Some of it's fair, some of it's unfair. I wonder how much of the fact that he is making $5 million, which is what your national championship head coach was making. It doesn't change the fact that you're 5-7 not bowling, but I wonder if there'd be less vitriol in his direction if he was making 3.8, but he's not. I mean, good for him.
Yeah, but I think you had to, you weren't hiring him he wasn't an assistant that you were bringing on. When you're hiring an assistant coach, well, man, look what Ohio State's guy's making. Like
right.
Ohio State just saved like $4 million a year, right?
Yeah.
There's no way if they'd have gone and gotten a proven guy that they would have only paid 4.5 for him. So you have a little bit, when you're hiring an assistant, you can play cheap for a while, which is what Florida State did with Jimbo. And then, obviously they started paying him commensurate to his success. I think with Willie, $5 million for a guy that's, quote unquote proven, and you're hiring from another Power 5 school. I think that's about the norm. I think that's a normal salary. And also, don't forget, Aslan, he did give him $1 million back to the school.
That is true.
So let's just say this year he was only paid $4 million.
Yeah. But
I think when you look at Jimbo, and then we'll get to the questions. I'm sorry, when you were just saying that about Saban's assistants, I just think maybe that's where when you look at what went wrong, obviously the offensive line is to blame. We get it in what happened, but man, his assistants, he did not hire a good staff. After I guess what happened was, so after the 12 season when he had to hire basically a whole new staff, he had to get 6 new assistants. They went and won the dang championship. But the only coach really, wouldn't you say that the only coach that really made a difference on that squad was Pruitt?
Yeah.
Like who would you say was the best assistant hire of Jimbo's career?
I mean,
at Florida
Jeremy
State.
Jeremy Pruitt for sure, man. For sure.
Who's number 2?
Jay Graham.
Right? I mean, and he's a running backs coach.
Or maybe Tim Brewster.
Which, yeah. I mean, I could tell Dalvin, man, just you got to run fast here. Like if there's there's a guy right there, you need to bust that tackle. You need to bounce onto him and then run fast. So he didn't, Bowden made some really good hires, obviously. Jimbo never really did that. He got kind of, the Pruitt situation really hurt. If that could have kind of materialized for another 2 or 3 years, I think it could have the defense could have gotten to a point where it almost could have fed itself, but it didn't. He lost his Mickey Andrews after one season for a variety of reasons we don't need to get into.
And a lot of them weren't Jimbo's fault.
Do what?
And it wasn't really Jimbo's fault.
No, sir, it wasn't. But, after that, he just none of those assistants, the assistants kind of let him down, or he let himself down by keeping them. And they were having just enough success to keep them in line. But, the Bill Miller hire, Trickett staying on as long as he did, Dawsey, Sunseri, Lawing, like none of it worked. None of it worked. Charles Kelly, I forgot about him. None of it worked, and I think when you look back at what happened, the kind of slow decline, man, he had a chance after that national championship season to get to just really stack the staff, and it just never really happened. And you look at the guys that were on that staff now and where they are, as opposed to what happens to the guys on Nick Saban's staff.
Right.
That's a big deal to me. I mean, that's a big deal. I think Jimbo, and you look at his A&M staff now. Well, he went and got, in my opinion, the best defensive coordinator in the country. And then he also got, where did that guy come from? Memphis? His OC?
Offensive coordinator, yeah.
Yeah, and Memphis was scoring 45 points a game. He wasn't just a guy that was in name only. He went and got a real offensive coordinator. Now, it's still Jimbo's offense, but I think that guy's probably got some fingerprints on it. I think he didn't really take care of himself on the assistant front, and Florida State paid the price. Also
has a former NFL offensive line coach, Jim Turner, coaching his offensive line too, so that always helps.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's that again, and I'll say it till the day I die, which hopefully isn't for another 70 years.
Woo!
Well, I don't know if that's true.
Come on.
Does anybody want to live to 113?
I do, damn it. I don't want to die.
Well, sure.
Ever.
The fact that Jimbo got himself a better staff at Texas A&M than he got at Florida State by a worlds better, in my opinion. That will always be a
Point of
negative
contention.
on Jimbo's slate.
Yeah. All right, you get the last word in.
Sorry, buddy.
Knock my guy. I see how it is. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and start answering some questions. We have a whole bunch of questions, and we have several phone calls. So let's begin, Corey. Maxwell Gibbs starts us off. Merry Christmas, gents. It's cold in New York City, but it's a very special and magical time. Are either of you shocked to see Brian Burns be rated as high as the 14th overall draft prospect? That's a high
am.
Number,
yeah,
man. Yeah. I
I
got love for
think
Brian
he's a
Burns,
good college player.
That's a high number. Or low
yeah,
number.
just think, when I watch the NFL, you don't see a lot of guys that look like him.
Yeah.
But again, he's got the frame. Maybe they think that, he's obviously got the speed. Maybe they think they can put 25 or 30 pounds on him and he can hold it well, and then he can be an outside linebacker. You just don't see defensive linemen that look like him rushing a passer in the NFL on a was he 220 pounds, maybe 230 pounds? He's just not a big dude. And so I would be very surprised if he went that high, but I'm pulling for my guy. That's my dog, the pressure machine.
Pressure washer. Florida State Seminoles.com has him listed at 6'5", 235. That sounds
all
decent. Right. Heck, put 10 pounds on him, he could be an outside linebacker in a 3-4.
He just doesn't look 235 to me. Yeah. But maybe, I haven't,
maybe, let me see.
I haven't seen him step on a scale, so I don't know.
How about Bud Dupree? Let me look at Bud Dupree. Played at Kentucky and is outside linebacker for the Steelers. But yeah, he's 6'4", 269. Good grief. That's a big boy.
I was going to look up I'm going to look up Vic Beasley.
All right.
Because they have similar body types, I think. He's 6'3", 246.
There you go.
He's also terrible, by the way. He was good for one season when he led the league in sacks, and he's been just awful. He's got 3 sacks this season.
What about my guy Khalil Mack from Fort Pierce, 6'3", 247?
Who?
Khalil Mack.
Okay. Hey, if Brian Burns is really 235, that's what I question. Yeah. It's not that 12 pounds. Yeah, that's nothing. I just didn't realize. We'll see at the combine what he really is and what he looks like. But that to me, it just, again, man, that's really high for a guy that's, we don't know what other tricks he has in his sleeve. He's a great speed rusher, but what else can he do? And at the NFL, can he cover? Yeah. Because if you're an outside linebacker, man, you just don't rush the passer the whole time.
Right, for sure. How about my guy Khalil Mack, 2-star inside linebacker from Westwood High School down in my hometown of Fort Pierce. Look at that.
He's from Florida?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I don't think I ever realized. And he went to Buffalo, right? Isn't that where he went?
Yep.
Man, that's crazy. Still, how'd he end up at Buffalo? Like, he had to be recruited by, like, UCF or FIU or somebody, right?
No, I mean, his Rivals.com page only has one school showing interest, one offer. Buffalo. Wow, man, they nailed. Who is that dude? Who spotted him and signed him? Go pay him $1.7 million. Yeah, man. Khalil Mack's recruitment by a lone coach from an FCS school based in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia is hard to fathom in an era when Florida high school players are often well known by the time they're old enough to get their driving permit. Yep. Good.
What do you mean? What about Virginia?
I was just saying it was an FCS coach, I guess, from Liberty. It was the first one I ever saw.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyhow, enough of Khalil Mack. I hope it works out for Brian Burns. Also, Maxwell Gibbs goes on to say, I posed a question, Corey, who would be a better Secret Santa, you or me? He says Corey would be his choice for Secret Santa only because I could see Corey taking the easy way out and just getting the prepaid Visa gift card or an Amazon gift card.
Amen, Maxwell. Amen, buddy. I would just give you a $50 bill.
There you go. What are your plans for the holidays this year, gentlemen? I'll be escaping cold weather and spending it in beautiful Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I'll be meeting my girlfriend's family for the first time. Any advice you two can share on meeting a significant other's family for the first time? Firm handshake. Look the dad straight in the eye when you're shaking his hand. Good firm handshake.
Right.
And constantly ask the mom to help. Does she need help in the kitchen? Does she need help cleaning something? Does she need help putting something up? Just keep doing that.
Also, when you meet the mom, say to your girlfriend, you didn't tell me you had a younger sister.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, they love that stuff. That's not at all like demeaning or anything. It's they love that stuff. So try that. I guess you'd want to speak some if you can learn Portuguese. I don't know if my man knows Portuguese or not, but maybe learn a few phrases. I think that would be a nice touch for them. And eat whatever they give you to eat.
Yeah, and be super nice to the girlfriend. Obviously, push the chair in. Just do the old gentlemanly stuff. So they witness that, they see that, they're like, all right, our daughter's in good hands with the gringo.
And don't call any escorts when you're in Rio.
And it's going to be hard,
really,
man, because what I've heard down there, woo. Enol_2000. Good morning, guys. Even though you're recording this at 11 p.m., I still say good morning to you both. He knows us so well.
He does.
We all remember that post-game presser versus Virginia Tech where Willie had the, oh, God, when the world was that look on his face. Given what we witnessed this season, there are times where I wonder if that look he had really was the early realization that this season wasn't going to play out the way we had all hoped. I know he wasn't going to say that after one game, but I can't help but think he had a cold dose of reality hit him that Labor Day night. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that reality hit all of us, right? About midway through the third quarter, like, what in the world is this? It could be that he realized, okay, can't block anyone, number one. This quarterback doesn't see it. He's not running it well. Maybe my OC isn't doing me any favors, and this is going to be a long, long season. I mean, all that could have been running through his head. It did look like his head was spinning. And I will say this, he looked stunned. I don't think it was like for the cameras, like I'm going to act like I'm upset or stunned or anything. He was, to me, didn't you think he was legitimately stunned, like he couldn't believe what had happened?
I think, this isn't a knock on people. I really feel like he cried before he walked in that room. I mean, his eyes looked like he just cried. I don't know
if he did, but yeah, it looked like he was. Yeah, it wouldn't stun me.
It was a jolt. It was a jolt for sure, man.
I don't know. That would stun me if your head coach doesn't need to be crying after a loss. No, I mean after a season opening loss. But yeah, you could tell he just looked completely stunned. And, never really got a ton better.
And that's the thing, though, is, as the losses piled up, he never got used to it. Every time we would talk to him after a game, it was just tough loss for the Noles. He never got used to it.
You're right. Like, even the Florida game, he looked a lot like he did after the Virginia Tech game.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good sign, right? Well, if I want to be Mr. Positivity or Mr. Optimistic, like, you'd hate for your head coach to get used to losing and for it not to hurt.
Yeah.
It certainly looks like he takes these personally and they really hurt.
It just goes to my point that none of us ever caught him by surprise. It's like, did they have really good weeks of practice? Like, he obviously believed in this team. And I mean, because you would not look that hurt, that dejected after losses if you knew you really didn't have the horses to go head to head with these teams. But I mean, obviously, the Florida game is just the reality sets in that everything is now over. The streaks and all that kind of hit you.
But he was like that for NC State too, like all of them. Like, I didn't see him after Notre Dame, but he seemed like he was like that after every loss. And then it's like, well, okay, man, I guess that's good that you believe in yourself and your team that much. That's commendable. Yeah. And all right, good. You don't ever want to get used to this, and you don't want to be someone that handles losses well. You want to be somebody that handles them. I mean, not like Nooney Murray or Zaquandre White poorly, but you want to handle them poorly where you're like, okay, I don't ever want to feel that again. We don't need to ever do that. We don't ever want to go through a season like this again. So you hope they really resonate.
Bimini bound. I would also have to go with Corey for a Secret Santa. I feel like Aslan would gift me a used pumpkin carving kit. Not because I think you're cheap or anything, Aslan. I figured you may have been burned in the past and won't be duped into giving a good gift again. Man, I still don't know I'm going to get the girlfriend for Christmas, man. I mean, it's kind of racking her birthday was like a week ago, and now I got to turn around and get her a Christmas gift. It's not fair.
But then you get to go 11 months without having to think about it.
No, because then you got Valentine's Day in a few months, and Can't stop
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, that's true. You got Labor Day, Flag Day. They all start stacking up.
Arbor Day, got to buy her tree.
Hey, I got an idea. I got
says-
something you could get her for Christmas. I got an idea.
Okay. All right. Don't say it over there. She listens sometimes.
No, I was
Really,
going to
she
say,
tells-
you know, if you're really serious and when you really love someone,
Can we keep
saying
it
you-
simple on Walt Bell's departure? Offense sucked. Bell is gone. If Howell decommits over him leaving, then he's not the guy we need.
what was the first part?
Just can we keep it simple on Walt Bell's departure? The offense sucked. Bell is gone. If Howell decommits over him leaving, then he, being Howell, is not the guy we need.
I was kind of thinking about that too, right? Like, and by the way, we had a story on War Chant. I'm not going to give you all the details because you need to subscribe if you don't, and if you do, just hop on over there. But still, it would appear still very much in play for Sam Howell. As you might expect, they probably want to see who the OC is first. But yeah, like, yeah, I mean, I can see that, right? Again, the people listening to the show yesterday, I was very flummoxed at the idea of Walt Bell leaving, costing them their star hotshot quarterback recruit. Because again, he was going to be running Willie Taggart's offense. I mean, it's Willie Taggart's offense. So when you committed to Florida State, I know Walt Bell is your guy, but you're committing to run Willie Taggart's offense. So, and if one guy leaving makes you want to go play for 3-9 Mac Brown, have at it, man. When you could be playing for 5-7 Willie Taggart. Hey, it's your life. YOLO.
R. Walling. Good evening, gentlemen.
What did you think? You didn't even answer that.
I mean,
I'm certainly not. I don't know if the first part of the question was saying Florida State fans shouldn't be hung up on Walt Bell leaving, and I don't think they should be. And again, it's not because I don't think he knows what he's doing. He might end up being a genius. It didn't work here, and he wasn't given the keys to make it work here. If he was being held back, but if that gets Hugh Freeze in the fold or somebody like that in the fold, and Willie's more apt to hand over the keys to someone like that, then it might be a good thing. But certainly, it doesn't seem like a huge loss at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's just another example of, situations of being a head football coach that Willie has not shined in doing. I think somebody on War Chant, this guy needs to not. I mean, this guy constantly tells me to stop doing stuff. I'm not going to stop doing stuff.
Well, good. We'll give him some airtime then.
Yeah. But I understand Willie had the protracted sort of, not protracted, but the obviously the very condensed calendar to get a recruiting class and get a coaching staff assembled. But again, I mean, this is a guy you hired and you couldn't make it work. I mean, this is a guy that he wasn't even going to call plays for you. Like what could have been the philosophy clash, thing that wasn't working together with these two. But again, if they get a good offensive coordinator, then if they get a Hugh Freeze, then yeah, it's all good. But if they got to go to plan C or plan D, they're going to probably end up with a guy that's going to have somewhat of a similar profile to Walt Bell, I would imagine. So then where are we? But yeah, I don't, it's, to me, none of it is, wow, Florida State just lost a really good coach. How are they going to be able to rebound for this? It's just.
And also, we don't know that they lost a really good quarterback if they end up losing Sam Howell. None of us know if that kid's going to be any good.
Yeah.
It's all speculation. You don't like losing a quarterback this late in the game. But again, you wouldn't, if it turns out that you end up getting a great offensive coordinator that works really well with Willie Taggart and things fly, then it certainly wasn't worth keeping Walt Bell to keep Sam Howell.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll look back on and maybe laugh at it all this, down the road. Yeah, for sure.
We'll know in 3 years, right? 2 or 3 years. We'll know exactly if this was the beginning of the end or the beginning of the rebirth.
Yeah. That Garnet squawking bird, right? Phoenix. Garnet squawking Phoenix.
Yeah.
That you wrote
I wish you'd see the last paragraph of that column. The people that don't know, you need to read my column on War Chant. But that really, I did that whole thing about the rebirth and the rise of the Phoenix and how the whole nation is going to hear the squawk of the Florida State Garnet majestic bird, or it goes another way. That's how I wrote it. It could go another way. Who knows?
R. Walling.
I couldn't quite commit. I couldn't quite commit to the thesis.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. R. Walling says, good evening, gentlemen. Last week, you guys said that Jimbo's offense hides a bad offensive line better than Willie's does. Not sure we can say that for certain. I'm not a football coach, but from my observation, it appears that the offensive line suffered at the hands of Francois. His refusal or inability to keep on the zone read was the biggest problem with our offense. When the unblocked defensive end never had to respect the quarterback run and made that play a failure, and they just kept running the zone read all season despite this. Keep up the good work, man. Rob.
It's also hard to say because until I did the column last week about the O-line, I didn't realize how much better last year's O-line was than this one.
Can we say less worse?
Much better.
Can you say less worse? Better implies good.
Yeah, you're right. Sure, less worse than this one. The one this year was like a 52.3 or whatever it was, average grade. Last year's was a 66. That's the difference between, I don't know. It's hard to even quantify. Yeah. But so yeah, I just think when you get in a power I formation, when you have a fullback, you have a tight end, it's not so much on those five guys up front. You can hide some things, or you can run to the other side. Florida State just, when you're in the spread and your quarterback won't keep the ball, it's tough. It does not do the offensive line a bad offensive line any favors. No.
Yeah. Again, the offensive line was very poor. We get it. Next question. How about _ them Knowles? Hey guys, writing in from Philadelphia. I am new to War Chant, have been a listener all season, and finally let you guys take my money. Awesome. Thank you.
There we go.
Appreciate
it worked.
Welcome.
Wrap up the show. We got it.
Yeah. Are you surprised Walt Bell was offered a head coaching job so soon? How do you think this will impact offensive recruiting, and who do you think we should target as a replacement? Keep up the great work. Head coaching job for sure. I mean, I know it's UMass, but that he got a head coaching job, age 34, coming off a 5-7 season where it wasn't your offense, but still you were the guy that had the title over it. Absolutely surprised. Like I said, I found out about it driving back from the Champions Club and the women's soccer celebration. My Miami friend texted me like, how the hell did Walt Bell get a head coaching job? And I'm like, what? And then I went on War Chant and saw that he was gone. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, I was absolutely surprised that he got a head coaching job. I don't know how much it's going to impact the offensive recruiting. I feel like the offensive linemen, they're not going to change their mind. The only thing that could switch is it would probably be Sam Howell. I know guys like George Pickens had a pretty decent relationship with him, but I think if they keep Howell, that probably helps them get that 5-star wide receiver from Hoover. And who do we think they should target as replacement? I like Hugh Freeze. I know one of the other names that Gene put out there that I guess Plan B was supposed to be Kendall Briles, who's at Houston, and they re-upped him a few days ago or last week. So I don't know how practical it is to pull him away. Like after that, I really don't know. I think a person who's somewhat connected, who kind of called the Harlan Barnett hire from last year on the boards, threw out Jeff Scott, who's the son of Brad Scott, former Florida State assistant, who was the South Carolina head coach. Mm-hmm. But he's the co-OC at Clemson. I find it hard to believe he would leave conference to come over here. But this is a guy who called the shot with Harlan Barnett last year, and apparently Willie spoke to him. I mean, Clemson has a pretty nice offense, but again, I don't know how splashy of a hire that is, and if that's a guy that can just take over everything and get it running immediately fine.
Well, and I don't think the name is as important as what the duties will be. I have a hard time saying that word. If you're just hiring an offense, if it's Willie Taggart's offense, then who cares? If he's actually going to give the keys away, that's something completely and totally different. And we just don't know that, do we? We can all assume and speculate, but we don't know if he's willing to give up the keys to this thing. And as far as recruiting goes, no, to me it would be like, if Jimbo had stayed, but Randy Sanders had taken the job at East Tennessee, would they have lost any offensive recruits because Randy Sanders left?
No, but
they're
again,
coming to play for Jimbo. It's Jimbo's offense, and I'm talking about just Walt Bell, like maybe Sam Howell, I guess, but none of the skill guys, none of the linemen. It really surprises me that even the quarterback would be affected at all, because it's still Willie Taggart's offense. That's how it's That's how it's presented. That's how it's run. He talks about it. It's his baby. Real
quick, Corey, here's the thing.
I wouldn't think it would matter that much.
I spoke to Michael Langston earlier in the week. I taped it before you hopped on with us. I mean, Michael literally said the only person the Howell family spoke to was Walt Bell. Like, they never spoke to Willie. So, I mean, it's not Walt Bell's, again, some sort of genius. It's just that's the guy they knew. So I don't. That's why I don't think comparing to Jimbo is fair.
I'm sure that's who the relationship was with. You're telling me all the times Howell came to visit? The head coach didn't say, "Hey, man, what's up?"
No, the head coach did, but the day-to-day texting, the day-to-day check-in phone calls was Walt Bell, man. I mean,
yeah, I get that. Sure, that's how. But who has he been texting in North Carolina that's still there?
Yeah, it's home. I don't know. I get it.
Anyway.
Yeah. By the way, it's Fear My Spear 76. That's the guy who threw out Jeff Scott out there and seems to know a thing or two. Just want to give him a shout out.
Man, Brad Scott, his dad was really good at Florida State. Yeah. His dad was actually the OC when they did the fast break.
Yep.
That was old Brad Scott, baby.
Bradley Moss 22. Wake up. Hey, guys, new War Chant member, first time writing in.
Man, all right. We're killing it.
Welcome. Probably the only FSU fan out here holding it down in Portland, Oregon, but thought I'd show you guys some love from the Pacific Northwest. Quick fact, Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, is from Portland. Look at that. He's a new guy.
Oh, there we go. Somebody did it. Yeah. Nice.
Awesome. Anyway, since we were moving into the offseason, wanted to get your thoughts on recruiting. By the way, Bradley, we're not the recruiting guys, but we'll try here for you. How does the current staff get the right guys in here that are not only good players, but don't feel entitled, who want to win, and are not going to give up when times get tough? All these other elite programs are recruiting these same players but are having success. How do you get the players to play consistently and keep fighting? Is that strictly coaching? What do you guys think would happen if Bama or Clemson got down by 3 or 4 scores? How do you think they would respond? Don't see that ever happening, but still would love to get your guys' thoughts. Thank you. Keep up the great work. Go Noles. Well, you saw Bama down in the SEC championship game by a couple scores.
Yep. They're always down by multiple scores to Georgia. They don't care.
Yeah.
That's their briar patch.
Yeah, this is going to be the interesting thing. This is another subplot to the offseason, I think, is in terms of recruiting, is that some of these guys that Willie's going after, there's a running back who's a 3-star running back who either is only offer or he's verbally committed to Appalachian State. So I don't know, maybe that's, again, this is a certain profile that Willie's going after, a kid that has the hunger, has a chip on his shoulder. I mean, I don't think that's the only kind of player he wants to bring in here, but maybe, I think it's Herm Edwards said, you can give me 1 or 2 SOBs on my roster, but I can't have 3 or 4. I can have 1 or 2, but you can't give me 3 or 4. So, maybe it's sort of the opposite, where Willie wants to get some guys that just are going to be that Rudy guy that's just going to really try really hard. Maybe there's just a different way that Willie has going about making relationships with coaching staffs and the way he talks to parents and the way he talks to guys that maybe he gets a better feel for getting the right kind of player in here. Again, I think a lot of the problems, the entitlement, like you said, Bradley, like Florida State brought guys like LaMarcus Joyner and Timmy Jernigan in here that wanted to help get this thing back on track. I think a lot of the players that they've had in the last few seasons just wanted to tag along, just thought they could put the spear on their head and they're going to be able to win a national championship and be a first-round pick. So maybe we're in a bit of a reset here, and the players that have the hunger that want to rebuild these things, Willie can sell them on that, and that's what they'll buy.
Yeah, man, that's exactly what I was going to say. Think about where this program is right now. It's 12-13 in its last 25 games. When this team won a national championship, the kids they're recruiting now were in middle school. So you're recruiting anybody that signs with Florida State. This isn't 2014 or 15 again, where they think they're signing to an NFL pipeline. They're not flooding the NFL right now with players with first, second, third round picks. That's not happening. The kids that were picked last year, I think 3 of them were in the 7th round. And they're not winning games. So there will be I do think if you're signing a kid that's joining a program that's 12-13 in its last 25 games, they might already have a different mindset than somebody that joined a program that's won that went 46-4 over 50 games. It seems like human nature. When you come into a program that's won 29 games in a row, you show up to practice thinking you're going to win every week. And you're supposed to win every week. And maybe that, It really is mind-boggling. I guess they just get so many good players it doesn't matter that Alabama and Clemson do this. That lull doesn't hit them like it hits other programs. And we'll see what happens to Georgia now that they're recruiting guys that think they're going to play for SEC championships and national championships. If they recruit kids with that kind of hunger and mindset, or if they're just you know what I mean? Like I just think, what does that say about a kid that's willing to say no to Clemson and no to Alabama to go play for a team that's 12-13 in their last 25 games? He believes in where he's going, and he wants to get him back to the top. And I think that's what happened with Telvin Smith and Lamarcus Joyner. Lamarcus Joyner could have gone anywhere. He went and played for a program that had gone 7-6 3 of the last 4 years. And that was always in him. That was in him in 12. That was in him in 13. There were all kinds of chips on all kinds of shoulders on that 13 team. And maybe this class and the next class are the classes that kind of bring that back. Or maybe they keep going 5-7 and leading the country in penalties.
Like you said, though, I mean, that really shoots down the theory. It's amazing. Like Alabama, obviously every kid that's committing to Alabama is expecting to just walk in there and win a national championship and become a first-round
But they're the only
pick.
ones, right? Who else has sustained excellence?
Clemson's getting close now.
I know those two. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Besides those two, it's a lot of ebbs and flows.
Yeah,
it's really remarkable that they always seemingly play so hard. And I know he's got 5 stars after 5 stars, but they don't recruit that much better than the other schools in the top 15.
right.
But holy moly, they always are sound. They always play incredibly hard. It really is the consistency in which they give effort. They never have a bad year. They rarely have a bad quarter. It's like when you see them down, when you see them get beat for touchdowns, it's kind of stunning. Like, God, what happened on that play?
Yeah.
That's not normal. And so, I don't think that's the norm, but I also don't think it's the norm for Florida State to go from where it was to where it is now. There's a fine line in there. Be like, who would you even say? I mean, I guess Oregon played for a national championship and then went off the rails. USC hasn't been good in a long time. Like LSU, they're always like 8-winish.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't want to aspire to be 8-winish LSU, but, I don't know.
Oh, I just remember this. Shout out to listener BJ. He apparently works out at the same gym I do. He came up and said hello to me, Corey. Wanted to tell you what's up. Listen to the
Did
show
he spot
every day,
you?
he says. And he's a hunting dog. He ain't a show dog. He was in there working out. He wasn't in there with like tights on and looking at himself in the mirror doing curls. He was
Oh, good.
he was
Did y'all
dog.
spot each other or anything?
No. I was warming up. when he ran into me or whatever. So I'm at the point, Corey.
Now,
where
when I used to
literally-
work out, I'll be honest with you, Aslan, because I didn't work out much in my life until I probably got to be about 30.
Yeah.
And then I did pretty well for a couple years where I'd work out, probably 2 or 3 times a week. And man, I'll be honest with you, I was that guy. I went to the curls. I got the not the 2 dumbbells. I got the 1 long bar.
Yeah.
Where you do them you do both arms at the same time. I'd roll my sleeve up to my shoulder.
All right.
And I just watch it pop. I'd watch I was addicted to that. I see how it can be now I'm not anymore, obviously, but man, for about 6 months or a year, that was fun to look at.
Yeah. By the way,
Sorry, I know I share way too much. I don't care.
That's fine. By the way, we're gonna have Michael Ray Garvin on the show probably next week, and maybe he'll have some workout tips for us or what have you. So,
right.
But yeah. All right. Next question comes from Noel Dad 84. Gentlemen, wake up. He had like 7 A's in the wake up, but anyhow, wake up. I'm praying to God by the time Aslan reads this, we have a new offensive coordinator to replace Walt Bell. How he is.
Prayer was not answered.
Yeah. How is he? How does he fit into the new staff? If we haven't hired a new OC, can you please play the intro to Slayer's Angel of Death? That scream you hear is our head coach watching his recruiting class fall apart. Oh, man.
Oh, no.
All right. Moving along. Next question.
That was something.
Megacolon.
It would be. I guess you could listen to that when you're working out.
No, that's just too much, man. That's
a lot. That is a lot.
That's a lot on the plate. Megacolon. What do you gentlemen think of the fact it's reported that Walt Bell was the only coach on the staff that had a relationship with Sam Howell and his family? Do you think it's troubling that Willie Taggart didn't build a serious relationship with the most important player and only quarterback in the recruiting class? Seems very short-sighted to me. It's peculiar, for sure. I mean, kind of we talked about a little bit here earlier. It happens. I don't want to say short-sighted. I mean, I don't know. Willie's got other things going on. If he knows that Walt Bell can handle that and he can go ahead and try to form some other relationships and inroads with other important players. Obviously, Willie says he needs to get a lot of he's got to get better players in here to take other guys' jobs. So if Walt Bell's not going to call plays, at least have him just work on that one thing and have it covered for you. You would imagine, though, at some point if there was acrimony between him and between Taggart and Bell, and he knew that he was going to be leaving, that he would maybe try to kind of wiggle into that. But again, I'm not bothered by it, man. If they don't get Sam Howell, I don't think that sets back Florida State football a great deal. I just really haven't lost a lot of sleep over it, man.
No, I haven't either one of them. And my opinion of Howell is it's hard. He plays his small school, and this isn't sour grapes because I don't even know if they're not getting them. Plays small school North Carolina football. He's 6'1", I think about 225 pounds, and he's pretty impressive in those highlights. But when I watch his highlights, I don't. Maybe it's just because I'm under the impression that Willie Taggart needs a guy that can really be dynamic with the football in his hands, with his legs at quarterback, and this guy isn't that. He's more of a bruiser, if you wanted to talk about the way he would run. And he's got some impressive runs in high school, but he's going up against 5'8" DBs. I don't know that his running style, his athleticism, maybe translates to the next level, in my opinion. But he can spin it. He can really throw it. But, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I watched a whole season of a non-mobile quarterback try to run this thing. And I think Sam Howell is probably a little bit more mobile than Francois, certainly an injured Francois, but not by much. I'm telling you, man, go get a John Franklin clone. Who's with me? Give me a John Franklin. Give me a Devontae Richardson.
I'm going to make an executive decision here. Phone call, folks. We're going to save you guys for Monday or our next show for next week because we're already at an hour right now, and we have
really
a whole bunch of more questions. So if you were listening to hear your call, not going to happen on this episode, but we'll get it next week. I promise you. Next question, Jordan 3085.
That'll be after the Hugh Freeze press conference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's scratch the football complex and purchase a time machine. Let's get the young Bobby Bowden back. That's good.
Okay.
I like that. I'm about that.
Okay, he would. It'd be really fun to cover young Bobby Bowden.
Oh yeah. Grumpy BK, wake up! On Walt Bell taking the UMass gig, do you think that this was a mutual separation with Willie and Taggart knew it was coming? Perhaps the writing was on the wall early on and was the reason Taggart was so adamant about not playing Blackman to preserve his red shirt in case we lost Howell. And is there any chance Bell was actually processed, but Taggart gave him a soft landing? Really good questions that I don't have the answers to.
I think there could have been maybe a conversation. We don't know. Let's just put it that way. We don't know. They've only been here 11 months. And we don't have good enough relationships with either one of them to know the real story. And if we did, it'd probably be off the record anyway, so we couldn't talk about it. I think there's certainly a possibility that they had a talk sometime in October, November about, I'm sorry, man, this isn't working. If you want to talk to your agent and maybe put some feelers out there, have him meet with some search firms and let them know that you're interested, then have at it, because it's going to be hard to bring you back next year. I think I'm going to go in a different direction. That would not stun me at all, right? Would that stun you if Taggart had said that?
That seems, I understand it makes sense because they're having a bad season, but to throw the towel in on a guy that quickly, that sounds.
But if you know, right? Like, yeah. You went on just one date with someone, right?
Right.
You can know. And he had to hire Walt Bell so quickly, and they had never coached together. They had never worked together. And after seeing it, after living it for 6 months or 9 months, 10 months, and then obviously 8 or 9 games into November, maybe he's like, this isn't working. And so, hey, man, just to give you a heads up, I don't want to pull the rug out from under you. I want you to be able to land somewhere. I mean, we heard about him, interviewing it maybe. We don't know if it happened, but it's rumored to interviewed at Kansas.
Yeah.
For the OC. Like, would you really ever in a million years leave Florida State for Kansas? Like, if it wasn't either he was racing to get out or he was told, man, try to find somewhere else because we're going to go in a different direction. So I don't know. I think the one thing that might hold that theory back is, okay, then why hasn't anybody been hired? If it wasn't out of the blue,
yeah.
If you had somebody in mind, if you had a whole plan in place that you were going to have another OC, I think you'd already have something lined up because signing day is 2 weeks away now. But I wouldn't be stunned, right? I mean, that wouldn't stun me. It also wouldn't stun me if Walt Bell was like, man, I his agent calls him with that possibility. Somehow UMass got his name. Somebody put in a good word for him. And his agent was like, hey, do you want me to pursue this? And Walt Bell's thinking, okay, well, I was the offensive coordinator for just the worst offense in the country. After not doing a whole heck of a lot at Maryland, the bloom's going to be off my rose pretty soon. I might want to strike while the iron's lukewarm.
Yeah, I don't think in this day and age, I don't know how quickly you can fire a guy and then bring in a new. I mean, USC, Clay Helton.
I don't think he ever would have presented it as being fired, though. I think it was always going to be take another job.
I'm just saying in terms of an agreement being between the parties, between Willie, administration, and Walt, that he's going to be gone and then, we'll transition to another offensive coordinator. I don't think obviously that conversation happened. I don't know how often that does happen because, I mean, look at Southern Cal and Clay Helton. He knew he had to get rid of his staff to keep his job, but it took a while for him to finally get Cliff Kingsbury on board.
Right,
so.
yeah, well, he didn't even he probably didn't even know that Kingsbury was going to be available.
Yeah, so, I mean, these things, I'm sure –
there's moving parts for sure.
Yeah. All right.
So we did not answer that question, but it was a good question.
It was.
Keep them coming. I'm really disappointed that nobody has told us their city or anybody famous from their city, except for our man from Portland.
Be patient. Grumpy BK sent off another comment. Basically, for the record, I thought Bell was a bright spot on the staff. Guy seemed to have a very high football IQ, has a disciplined and structured military mentality, and appeared to know how to follow as a disciple. It boggles my mind what we saw on the field. Can't help but think that this is the tone at the top of Willie being a very casual players coach and his stubbornness to not let go of play calling duties on 2nd and 16. I think the culture of our players didn't help. High performers don't accept being micromanaged for long and find other ways to climb the ladder if and when obstacles present themselves. Whether Bell was a high performer is to be determined, but he certainly carried himself as such. It feels to me like it was his decision to bolt for UMass, and it was not mutual with Willie Taggart. Yeah, I mean, that's...
Could be.
Yeah. I like that. Those are all really... Maybe you should take my job some days, Grumpy.
I was going to say, he's more articulate than either one of us.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Grumpy BK from Boynton Beach. Make some noise.
All right, Grumpy BK, slow your roll a little bit, man.
Yeah, man.
Those questions make people realize how inarticulate the two hosts are.
Yeah.
So next time, throw in some double negatives or something, man. You can't be that articulate on our show. Yeah. That's not permissible.
Sam A. Knoll, or Sam A. Knoll. Anyhow, I woke up and joined. First time on the thread. Love hearing you guys every morning from Summerville, South Carolina. Corey, it's home of ballers like A.J. Green, Brett Gardner, Kevin Long, Charles Green, a.k.a. Angry Grandpa. Not a baller, but funny. There you go.
All right. Okay. I know A.J. Green. Very familiar with him.
Yeah, Brett Gardner, Yankee outfielder. Kevin Long.
Yep.
Who's Kevin Long? Kevin
Long, the former Florida State lineman? Is that Kevin Long?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, a good one.
So I agree with Corey in that we hired Taggart because of his offense. With the right players in place, I feel like it will be effective here. Just need to be patient and let him get some recruits. My thoughts are more on the defensive side of the ball. As bad as the offense was this year, the defense gave up way too much in the passing game. Defensive back coach is a huge must-hire this offseason, in my opinion. Your thoughts and expectations on if this will be a hire we see and whom it could be. Thanks for the show. Keeps us engaged and somewhat hopeful for the future. Well, maybe not so much the latter. P.S. Thanks for the War Chant 30 hookup. No problem, man. Welcome.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining.
Hope you enjoy it, man. Yeah, this is an interesting thing. Is that I'm sure at some point at the dinner table at the Barnett household in Golden Eagle in Tallahassee, Harlan and his wife have to be kind of taking a sigh of relief, like, glad Walt left. That's, I can eat this meal and enjoy it a little bit better. Not that Walt, Harlan was going to get run out of town, but with everybody talking about how bad the offensive line was and people talking about the quarterback, is he leaving? Is he staying? Is he coming? Is he going? We sure haven't spent a lot of time talking about really how disappointing and, let's be honest with you, just toothless and bad. There you go, Grumpy BK. I'm sure you could have probably thought of a better way or a better adjective to describe the defense. Man. But just, absolutely a terrible defense. We're not talking about it, and it's something that we probably should discuss more, and I'm sure we will once the offensive coordinator thing gets figured out.
Yeah, it was not good. It underachieved, underperformed. Any under you want to throw in there, it was it. They've got to get so much better at linebacker. They've got to get more depth on the defensive line. You go into next season, what do you feel good about on the defense? Marvin Wilson? That about it? That about sum it up?
We like Asante.
Oh, yeah, you like your corners a little bit, but they got to play better, all of them.
Yeah.
They gave up way too many touchdown passes, quite frankly, to be simple about it. And, yeah, as far as D's coach, I am all aboard the Terrell Buckley train. I'm all aboard. You can go get a special teams coach for $82,000 and then go give Buckley whatever he's making at Mississippi State, and I bet you he comes. I think that's I would do that really quickly. I would do that in a heartbeat. I think they should have done that last year. I think that was a misstep. Buckley wanted to come. Taggart needed a DB's coach, and instead he hired Alonzo Hampton to coach his special teams. That was a mistake. And Taggart does get the benefit of the doubt in the sense that he did have to put that thing together so fast. He was literally on the ground running, having to figure out who he was going to hire. I think he thought Levitt was coming with him. Levitt didn't come with him. I think he thought Cristobal was coming. I think he thought Dugans was coming. And they didn't. And so he had to go to plan Bs and Cs a lot of different times. And, so he gets a little benefit of the doubt, but he's had a whole year to figure out his staff and what the weaknesses are. And, figure it out, man. Bring Terrell Buckley back. Bring T-Buck back. But no, even if you don't, I don't care what happens. The DBs have to be coached better. Plain and simple.
What was I going to say there? Mike. He wanted Mike Loxley too. I think once Cristobal stayed in Oregon, he tried to get Loxley, and then Loxley stayed at Alabama because they promoted him. So Walt Bell
pretty good move by Loxley.
Yeah, it was his third option. Yeah, I was trying to think. I would like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing a new linebackers coach. To be honest with you, I know Raymond Woody didn't have a lot to work with.
Well, that's it, right? Though it's the same thing as Greg Fry. That's an NA to me. It's an incomplete. Just the cupboard was so bare.
Can't you make guys at least? I don't know. Make them enthusiastic about being violent.
But the guys you're making enthusiastic are 208 pounds. There's only so much you can do when you had a true freshman who was your second best linebacker, and he's a safety. That's how bad things were.
RCKK90. Hey, guys, I posted this last week, but it was too late to get on the show, or you decided to ignore it, so I guess I'll know this week. You guys really are great, and I enjoyed the show immensely. Thank you. Appreciate that. I have a suggestion for a new segment on your show called Aslan's True Road Trip Stories, which would be along the lines of Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories from The Chappelle Show. You guys can reenact the bar fights and other significant events, and Corey can play one of the characters in the story, like the guy who Aslan decked in South Bend or the guy who got gas in his eye while changing the fuel filter. On a serious note, Florida games seem to be a clear indication. We're probably not going to do that. I don't have that many more cool stories, and it makes Corey feel uncomfortable. He thinks that I'm being the ugly Florida State fan. Somebody left
I think
a poor
cool
review.
is a little too much there.
Somebody left a review on iTunes. They were like, he makes Florida State fans look bad. I don't want to hear about that. Sorry. I don't know. Sorry, man.
You don't care.
Go listen to the other guy. On a serious note, the Florida game seemed to be a clear indication of a team that was coached well and improving as the year progressed, badly beating a poorly coached team that showed no sign of improvement from the first game to the last. I wish I didn't read that. It's true. And
was that a question or just the comment?
He's pivoting.
Oh, okay.
I really want to believe Willie is our guy for the long haul, but I just can't see how that will be the case based on the lopsided defeats and general sloppiness. Can you give me some shred of hope to help me look forward to next season? No. Next question.
I got one.
Bowen.
So I wrote a column on that was on the site on Wednesday. If you're not a subscriber, like our new subscribers that have been featured in this hour, you need to go join like they did. Be smart. My one shred of hope for you is that he's done it everywhere he's been, and Florida State is Florida State. So you have a guy with a track record of turning programs around. We don't know what Western Kentucky looked like Willie Taggart's first year. It might have been a horror show. We don't know what South Florida looked like the first year. They might have averaged 11 penalties a game. I know they got beat by like 25 points by a Division II school. I mean, they were pathetic. But 2 years later, 3 years later, they're 10-2. 2 years later, they're going to a bowl. The same thing at Western Kentucky. This guy has proven he can turn it around. And you're at Florida State, which proves all the time that it reinvents itself and can go win championships with different head coaches in different styles. And they always get players. And they should be able to get a lot of really good assistants. I think that's what you hold your hat on. There is a chance, a good chance, that he turns it around. Does he get it to a championship caliber? That's the question. That's what you can't lead the nation in penalties and win championships. But he's going to get players. You hope he gets a coaching staff that knows what it's doing and earns their money. But he has shown an ability at every stop he's been to turn it around. Why would Florida State be any different?
They came out and played really well against Miami. They played really good for 2.5 quarters, about 3 quarters. He dialed up a really onions trick play, either him or Walt Bell, or they both did, or whatever happened. But they called a really good play, and who knows? If they win that game, who knows how different the season goes?
I know it wouldn't have gone different at all. They'd have finished 6-6, but they'd be in a bowl at least.
Yeah,
I don't think they'd have built a whole lot of momentum off that win in Miami because those losses they had were they were just completely overmatched and terrible. But they would be 6-6 and going to a bowl, and they kind of got I know people don't want to hear it. They got screwed out of that win. That wasn't a forward pass.
Yeah,
it was a perfect play call. Either way, that doesn't excuse how bad they looked the rest of the season. But again, I just think the guy's history shows you that he turns programs around. These weren't accidents. It happened. And he's at Florida State. So if you're a Florida State fan, you have to think to yourself, man, this is Florida State. We've got a guy that can recruit and a guy that's turned programs around. He has a history of it. Why, if he can do it at South Florida, why couldn't he do it here? What would be the possible rationale that South Florida can be turned around, but Florida State can't? There isn't any. So, you just hope it happens sooner rather than later because none of us wants to watch that grossness that we had to watch this year.
And I think the offensive line, I think they're going to at least probably have one guy that's going to be a better tackle. I mean, I'm sure they're going to get one of these junior college, one of these JUCO guys. So you'll have at least, and I'm not saying Josh Ball is one of them because his ex-girlfriend got that handled pretty well. I think they're going to have a junior college offensive lineman, a tackle. I mean, they got to get a tackle. They know they need tackles. And I think the interior of the offensive line won't be that bad, even if Cole Minshew and Landon Dickerson aren't that ready to go. I think Brady Scott or Bavion will probably be just on par with Alec Everly. Who knows? Maybe they'll be a little bit better. And I think you keep your fingers crossed that Dickerson is healthy and he can shore up maybe one of the other spots. And, maybe Christian Armstrong, maybe Chaz Neal or Jalen Goss. Maybe it was such a low bar set by the 2018 offensive line. It's hard to imagine it being any worse. So that's going to get better. Corey cited all the stuff that happened in the past. Florida State had their backs against the wall in Miami, and Willie had that team coming out looking really good, really sharp, hostile environment, and rolling. Those are things that should make you feel good.
But yeah, again,
Corey,
I get it though, because Game 12 was worse than Game 1, and it was gross, and they were not well coached, and they need to be better coached. But again, there's nothing that leads us to believe they won't be. He's learned from mistakes in the past. He's made staff changes when he had to, and they've worked out. That's why he got to Florida State.
Ronald Bowen, 77. Hey, guys, new member, longtime podcast listener from Dillon, South Carolina. Hey, man. What up, Ronald? Welcome, buddy.
What up, R?
It's awesome.
R
man.
dog?
Nobody famous to speak of. Actually, I want to say Kevin Steele is actually from Dillon, South Carolina. Anyhow, nobody famous to speak of other than Raymond Felton, former North Carolina Tar Heel, New York Knicks.
Yeah, that counts, man. You got an NBA player from there? That's cool.
But he's from the next town over. And Derek,
never mind that.
And Derek Hamilton, Clemson wide receiver from a few years back. And good old count. South of the border. I finally drove by south of the border for the first time ever on the way to Raleigh for the North Carolina State game. It actually looks pretty cool. Everyone says that it's just a tourist trap. It looked pretty cool. I figured I could I'm sure I'd be able to eat something or buy some cool souvenir there. I wouldn't have a problem stopping at south of the border, but Ira was dead set on getting to Raleigh.
Kevin Steele is from Dillon, South Carolina.
Yeah, these are the things
south of the border is ridiculous. It is a ridiculous part of this country. The billboards for 40 miles. What do you do there? Just go buy ponchos? Yeah. I mean, I've never stopped, so maybe I should stop and see. But it just looks like a crazy theme park for I don't even know what. But hey, man, we all got to make livings.
Anyway, so my question. Since I'm certain Hugh Freeze can't play right tackle and I'm only seeing one commit on the board with an OL beside his name, can we talk about realistic O-line replacement possibilities? Because it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Unless we travel back in time and kidnap Mike Vick, we are going to need bodies. Your guys' thoughts or insights, please.
So they'll probably, what do we think? They'll sign probably 3 or 4 at least?
Yeah.
That's what they're hoping for, like 4?
Yeah, they got Dante Lucas pretty firmly committed. And there's a couple guys that Michael mentioned on the program earlier. Last name is Bland. I don't know his first name, but that's a guy that I think he's committed to Nebraska. Michael thinks that they'll probably be in a pretty good position with him if they want to turn up the heat. I don't know if they are, if they're not, why they are, why they're not. Yeah, I mean, they're going to bring in a junior college offensive lineman, and then
and also they have 3 kids redshirting. Right? Isn't that right? At least 3.
Chaz Neal, I don't know. I think Chaz Neal might need another year or 2 of seasoning. Jalen Goss is another guy that I think he's from Valdosta. I think he's from Lowndes. Or not. Is Lowndes in Valdosta? Or right? Lowndes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Valdosta is in Lowndes County. Yeah.
Right. All right. Sorry.
It's all right, buddy.
You fancy Georgians. But I think Christian Armstrong's a guy who did practice all year long for them. Maybe another year in the weight training program, 15 spring practices and summer workouts and all that kind of stuff will get him ready. And I know I just said, 2 minutes ago, you can't count on him, but yet you do have to remain hopeful that, hey, listen, Frank Gore had 2 catastrophic knee injuries in college, and I don't think he's missed more than maybe 6 games in his entire NFL career, and he's like top 10 all time in rushing yards. Maybe Landon Dickerson just has, 5 good months of health in his life and can start for Florida State for 12 or 13 games. And, maybe Cole Minshew only misses a game or 2 and they can piece some stuff around. But I think.
You just hope that they don't have to put Dickerson at tackle.
Yeah, well, I mean.
They probably will. But, you just think with Dickerson and Minshew at guards, all right, all of a sudden now you got a pretty good interior, right? If they're healthy, which is a huge if. Yeah. Well, that's that would be really a real positive. But, it's just they're going to have at least what if you count the redshirt kids, you're going to have at least 6 to probably 7 newcomers on the offensive line, and an old guy coming back in Dickerson. All right, maybe you can make something work there with the Brady Scotts of the world and the Cole Minshews of the world. You're going to have 12 or 13 able-bodied guys, you hope. Find a combination of 5 that can grade out at 66.
Yeah. And maybe Trevor Mowad comes down here and figures out a way to repair Jawan Williams. Maybe Greg Fry taps into something. Maybe one of the guys out of Jawan Williams and Abdul Bello actually becomes somewhat of a serviceable right tackle after another year. It's not out the realm of possibility.
Maybe they hire somebody from the Russian Sports Federation, and we can start getting these guys bulked up a little bit.
Would not be
those guys know how to do things.
Yeah. FSU guy 1989. Hey fellas, love your work. Keep it up. I know I'm not calling in, but here are some famous people from my town: Trey Thomas, Mike Gillisley, Luke Weaver, and Chipper Jones. I can see it because it's on his bio here, Corey. But do you know what town that is?
I was gonna say DeLand.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Man,
all right, good. There we go. Because of Chipper, my man Chipper.
Yep, old Larry.
And they didn't like old Chipper because I think his sophomore year, maybe his junior year, he left DeLand, which obviously he was the huge star in that school in football and baseball, and went to the Bowl School in Jacksonville, and made him not real. The locals were not real happy with him and his dad for that decision.
The Bowl School, just plucking everybody up.
Yeah,
Whatever
man,
happened
that's
to the Bowl School?
nonsense.
They used to crank out some talent, I feel like. It's been a long time since anybody from Bowls came to Florida State, feel like. John Frady.
Lavernius Cole. Did Lavernius Cole? No. He was from Jacksonville, but he didn't go to the Bowl School, I don't think. Yeah. John Frady, is that who you said?
Yeah.
Big time. Big time. Maybe right. Baselli?
Who?
Baselli? Was he from the Bowl School?
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Look at you.
Who? Who are you talking? What do you mean, who? The great Andrew Baselli. Another Rick Trickett, wonderful recruit. Thanks a lot, Rick.
My question for you, would you rather bring in a transfer or JUCO guy at quarterback for 1 year and then have them bounce, or bring in a high school recruit to have and develop for 3 or 4 years? I want both.
I was going to say, if the question is whether you'd have Sam Howell play or Jalen Hurts play, you want Jalen Hurts. And Willie Taggart really wants Jalen Hurts. You need to win immediately. And a grad transfer, in my opinion, gives you a better chance of winning than a kid coming straight out of high school. Unless that kid coming straight out of high school is like the kid at Clemson or Tua or somebody like that. But there aren't many of those guys.
Yeah, they're going to have to bring in a JUCO guy. I would love to think
JUCO guy. There aren't. When do JUCO quarterbacks ever? That's
grad transfer. All right, grad transfer.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I would love to believe that we have the solution in a slim, svelte, 6'6" young man from Belglade, Florida. But apparently, I don't know. I don't know, man. Damn. It's just hard to believe that this kid who grew over the season in 17 and had a full spring as the guy just was not a viable option at all. Just couldn't even entertain it. I'll never understand it. Knoll fan number 1. Hello, gentlemen. Famous people from my town are Emmett Smith, Derek Brooks, Bubba Watson, Addison Russell.
Boca Raton represent.
Hey, 954. So this season has been a little different, to say the least. My question for you, who would be the best fit for Florida State offensive coordinator, not just biggest name? And Corey, do you know if they are listening to you about recruiting a quarterback with a last name starting with W?
I don't know, but they should, because that's, even Casey Weldon finished second.
Yeah.
Like Weatherford, I get it. Kind of hurt the trend a little bit, but then Jameis came right back and crushed it.
Yeah.
So they need to. I don't know. So they have a WA that won a Heisman, a WE that won a Heisman, and a WI that won a Heisman.
Okay.
So go find a kid with the last name that starts with WO or WU. I mean, is this not? It ain't rocket science, folks. It ain't rocket science. There's got to be a quarterback somewhere in this country whose last name is like Wolf.
Yeah.
Go get him.
Go get him.
Go get that Wolf. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about. I'll be honest with you. I don't know who does know enough about offensive coordinators to know who would be a good fit. My dumb brain says go look at the top 20 scoring offenses in the country, or the top 20 offenses with the most yards. Go get one of those guys.
My hope, and this is going to be the biggest challenge for, I don't know, for both of us, Corey, but at least for me, is just going to be balancing the fact that a fit long-term and short-term solution. Again, I don't think Hugh Freeze is like the best fit at Florida State. I think he's kind of a fish out of water. I think he does better probably in a deep South school in the SEC. It's just his sort of comfort zone. It's his sweet spot. But again, I think when you're invested in a coach like Willie Taggart for at least $20 million more dollars. If you cut and run now, you owe 85% of his remaining salary, and he's got like $20 million remaining after this first season. And you're 5-7, and all this stuff happened. Like, you have to get this thing back on track. It might be kicking the can down the street, but you have to get this thing fixed. You can't go 5-7 again. So I do think it's a guy like Hugh Freeze, because he's a guy that, whether Willie wants to or not, or he's going to be directed to, he's going to have to give up control of the offense. He's going to have to let another guy call the plays, design the plays, coordinate the offense. And not to say that Willie's not capable of it, but maybe with the way this offense is now, they need a guy who's smoke and mirrors and can make things work. And Hugh Freeze never ran the ball all that well at Ole Miss, never really had good offensive lines at Ole Miss. But, man, they put up lots of points against lots of good defenses. So just so Willie can survive and that Florida State doesn't ruin this great experiment that's a financial burden possibly down the road, they have to get a guy that can just instantly take over, and you can give him, hamburger meat, and here it is. It's a $2 steak, this offensive line. It doesn't need to be a great tasting $2 steak, but just have it be the best $2 steak that tastes, the best tasting $2 steak you've ever had. It doesn't need to be the best steak you've ever had, but you need to make it the best $2 steak that's ever been consumed by somebody. I think Hugh Freeze is the guy that can make the chicken salad out of the chicken you-know-what.
Oh, you went with a completely different food right there at the very end.
That's how I do. That's how I roll.
All right. I followed you. I followed you the whole time. Yeah, I mean, that's the key, though. If the administration's going to give him Hugh Freeze or somebody of that ilk, it's their offense. Stay out of the way, Willie. Yeah. That's what the agreement will have to be almost.
Yeah,
man. It's obviously Nick Saban contributes some to whatever offense. He'll give. I don't think he's giving suggestions to his OCs, but he wants to know what's going on, and I'm sure Willie Taggart does too. If a Hugh Freeze is running his offense, but man, on game day it's his. During the week it's his. Preparation is his. Let him run the show. Let him be. If you want it that way, let him be. Bobby Bowden didn't coach defense for 25 years. It was Mickey Andrews, man. Mickey Andrews was the head coach of the defense. Hey, Mickey, we got a good game plan this week? Yeah, coach, think we're going to do all right. Great. See you Saturday. That was it. That's all he cared. That's what he did with the defense. Yeah. Was Willie willing to do that with the offense? Yeah. And also
he has to be willing.
But how much does the administration weigh the fact that the offensive line was so bad? And Willie could look at them and say, look, if I get an offensive line that's just a little bit better, you will see what my offense can do. We don't need Hugh Freeze. This offense works. Let me run it. But I need some horses. I promise you, give me time to get my roster the way I want it with those guys up front, a competent offensive line, and you will see results. We do not have to go spend $1.7 million to go hire the escort caller. That's a good nickname, right?
Yeah. Well, again, Corey, the only way he buys the time to build a roster is by winning games next year, and the quickest, easiest way to do that is to get a guy like Hugh Freeze. Like
maybe. Or you're having to switch up the offense completely again.
No. He runs. He doesn't run. He's not as power run based, but the concepts, the routes, the formations. The desire to go tempo. That's all Hugh Freeze stuff right there. I mean, I'm sure Hugh Freeze can try to implement some maybe more runs. I mean, Cam Akers is exponentially more talented than any running back Hugh Freeze ever had. I mean, Hugh Freeze is not a guy that gives the same guy the ball 21 times, but if he's got a Cam Akers, I'm sure he'll do it. Jordan Wilkins was a guy that played for them a few years. I think he's actually on the Colts roster that actually he did kind of pick their spots, and then he'd have some big games. I mean, he'd have 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, that kind of stuff. Maybe not running for 159 yards or anything like Marlon Mack or Royce Freeman, but. To get the roster built, if again, like Willie sold them on him. Hire me, you're hiring me, you're hiring my thoughts, my offense. Okay, but I don't have the right tools, I don't have the right supplies. Okay, we got it. In the meantime, you're going to have to do this for us, and this will buy you the time to save up the money to buy the supplies and the tools and everything you need. I just think that's.
I mean don't you think that's pretty fascinating? That whole dynamic of. Willie made it pretty adamant. It's his offense, and he wants to run it his way. He wants it's his baby. And then after one bad year, for a head coach that's used to having bad years, especially early on, for him to have to be almost forced into hiring this guy or somebody like him to satiate a fan base or to satiate an administration, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. He's never had an offensive coordinator like this.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see how that all transpires and how it works if it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. All Knowles. Not to keep the Josh Ball story going, but has anyone at War Chant seen the documents outlining his suspension? I'm curious if there were terms requiring him to basically reapply and show rehabilitation to be readmitted. Lots of posters suggest that FSU would be going back on his decision, but I haven't seen any actual proof. I don't think he should play football here, absent overwhelming proof he's changed. And if there is, FSU should be public about it, but whether he should be let back in school is a matter of the terms of the suspension.
Yeah, I don't no, I don't. I haven't seen those. I don't know if those are public record with student privacy laws, if they have that kind of stuff that's readily available. I know her complaint is public record, and it's not pretty. And again, not to wax on and on about it, but he can go play anywhere. Whether he's changed or not, and heaven forbid, let's hope he has. Yeah. But go be a changed man somewhere else. Because just think about, what if you do welcome him back? And what if, God forbid, something else happens? It's all on your hands. There's no reason. There's just no reason. It shouldn't even be a conversation. It is awesome if he gets his life back in order. It's awesome if he's got that out of his system, if he's grown up and he's matured. And he is allowed to go play college football wherever he wants. Whoever wants another, mediocre offensive lineman, he's there for you. It doesn't have to be in Florida State because, baby, Florida State is chock full of mediocre offensive linemen. Yeah. They got enough.
I pulled up a screenshot that I took from his ex-girlfriend when the ruling came down. It says the hearing panel finds Joshua responsible. Outcomes. As a result of this incident, the following sanctions are imposed. 1, suspension from the university effective immediately. 2, disciplinary probation effective spring semester 2019 and continuing until the end of spring semester 2020. So, yeah, I mean...
even if he came back, he'd be on probation.
Right. So he has more incentive to not be an idiot again. But, I mean, I'm not going to say...
does that ever stop anyone ever? There'd never be murders if that went through people's minds. They'd be like, well, this wouldn't be real smart. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in jail. I probably shouldn't do this. I mean, people do dumb things all the time and lose a ton because of it. Kareem Hunt. I mean, just people do dumb things without thinking. Obviously, he's done plenty of dumb things without thinking, and I just don't. It's just not worth it. Just from a pragmatic, callous standpoint, he's not good, and also it's terrible PR for a head coach that, quite frankly, doesn't need terrible PR right now.
Yeah. MFA 11.
And he's not even his guy, right? Correct. It's not like he went into Josh Ball's home when he was 17 years old and said, I'm gonna be like a second father to you. I'm gonna take care of you. He has no relationship with the kid. Anyway, sorry.
Last question. MFA 1169. Wake up.
How long have we been going? Is this our longest show?
We're on an hour 34 about right now.
Oh boy. All right, let's rock and roll.
MFA 1169. Wake up. Mike here from the West Coast, Los Angeles, California. Great job on a daily basis, fellas. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Mike. Genuinely. Thank you, man. 2 questions. 1, I've rarely heard Bell or Fry catch any blame for the performance of the offensive line, false starts, lack of rushing production, or just overall offensive play. Why is that? In reality, there should be little blame on coaches this past season. Plain and simple, the O-line was terrible, playing out of position, massive injuries, and little to no talent. Those are reasons, not excuses. Yeah, I think I haven't criticized Walt Bell on this show because it's tough to criticize an offensive coordinator who's not calling plays. Like, I don't know what you're coordinating, especially when you're up in the box. You're not yelling at guys, hey, no, you're supposed to be over there. No, get on line. No, you back off the line. He's in the box. What can he really do?
Well, but you're more than a coordinator than just on Saturdays. Like, you devise the game plan, theoretically, you devise a game plan, you find weaknesses in the defense, and you continually attack those weaknesses. That's kind of where you win games. It's not just the 70 plays that you call in a game. It's how you prepare for the week of what their weaknesses are and how to attack them. That's you're coordinating it. Like, it's not called the offensive play caller. It's you're the coordinator.
So he's designing plays, and then Willie's calling the plays that Walt's designing. Come on, it's Willie.
No, they're all designed. They've been designed for years. You say on Tuesday, their outside linebacker cannot cover our tight end. This team is terrible in zone coverage. Whatever you find otherwise, what are you doing? Why do you watch film? You can't just say the position is just solely play calling. It's so much more than that. And again, I'm not saying that Walt Bell did anything wrong. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know, and I wasn't in those coaches' rooms. But being an offensive coordinator isn't just about those 3 hours on a Saturday. Otherwise, Greg Fry, then all those offensive line false starts, everything is on. We wouldn't really blame Greg Fry that. He deserves a lot of blame too. Last year, that offensive line had 21 penalties. This year, they had 42. That, to me, goes directly back to coaching.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. That was in my story, the offensive line story that I wrote. They had 42. The offensive line this year combined for 42 penalties. God. Now, we can blame Willie Taggart all we want and say how undisciplined they are. Whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Are they being told to false start? Hey, cheat a little bit. No, but they're not being drilled well enough, or it's not taking. The coaching isn't taking well enough, and so there's a lot of fault that goes around. I think by and large, most people realize the cupboard was left really bare, and there's only so much you can do. Again, it doesn't mean you need to pee on the cupboard. It's kind of what happened this season. So, but nobody dispute. I don't think anybody doubts that Greg Fry knows what he's doing. So, but 42 penalties is a ton. A ton.
That's ridiculous. That's like practically 4 a game.
Yep. Does that surprise? When you think about it, does that surprise you?
Absolutely, because I didn't think they were that heavily penalized. I felt like in 17, like with Jimbo, I felt like that offensive line was more plagued by penalties. But I guess it's because they were actually in close games where it mattered, whereas this team was.
And they actually weren't bad with the false starts last year.
Yeah.
It was
16.
It was like 15 and 16. Yeah. It was 3 times a game. And also I went back and looked. There were 21 special teams penalties. 21. So you led the nation in penalties. 63 of them came on special teams and offensive line penalties. 65% roughly came or 60% roughly came on those 2 areas. Clean that up, man. Clean it up. But yeah, so anyway, going back to the main point, Willie's got to figure out a way to attack defenses better, figure out what his team's strengths are and his team's weaknesses are, no matter who the OC is. In my opinion, that's what it always seemed they went week to week kind of just slapping stuff together. There wasn't a lot of cohesion from week to week in what this team was, what its strengths were, and they never really did a good job of, illuminating those strengths, playing to them.
He said I think somebody asked him after the Florida game, can you tell us what the decision was to, start off with the ball? He's like, yeah, we wanted to get the ball and try to score fast, but that didn't happen. And it was like, so that was it, man? Like, we're going to get the ball first and we're going to score. And if we don't, then it's kind of like, what are we going to do?
We tried. But, of course, hey, we knew there was going to be they didn't block in the back on the first kick. So that was nice. They just got Tamorian with the nonsense pass interference penalty that kind of derailed the whole quarter. But, yeah, man, it was all bad. They weren't coached well. 42 penalties is a ton. I don't, and I wrote in that offensive line column, I'm like, man, I blame Trickett and Fisher for a lot with that offensive line, most of it. I don't blame them for 42 penalties. That comes down to paying attention to detail week in and week out. And they didn't.
He also asks us, do we listen to other FSU podcasts to hear a different perspective on the things we all saw this season?
Can you imagine? No, and not that there's anything wrong with other podcasts, but holy moly, we're inundated with it with our podcast, and then I also do headlines. So, I can't even imagine. That would be like, working at McDonald's all day and then just go eating there 3 times a day.
Yeah.
You just want to throw Big Macs at people.
I probably
always a good Saturday.
More. I used to listen to headlines all the time, but now, again, I don't want to listen to headlines because I don't want to co-opt Jeff's thoughts. I'll listen to Jeff when I'm in the car and he's on, but I don't go out of my way to listen to anybody, and it's nothing personal. Well, that too. I started doing that when it comes to the beat with writing. Like, I'll read Ira, obviously, but I don't want to read anybody else because I don't want them to. Number one, I don't want it to. If we have similar thoughts, I don't want to look like I stole a thought, and I also don't want to inadvertently steal something or say, "Man, that's a good idea," or now I can't write that because he wrote it or she wrote it. So I don't really read a lot of stuff, opinion wise. And I don't listen to other ones either, just because it's so much of my day, so much of my time anyway. And good grief, can you imagine listening to? And God bless all of you that do it, because I know you listen. There's probably a few of you that listen to more than just us. But can you imagine you and I listening to other people's podcasts about this particular team? Well, apparently
it's just a bunch of doom and gloom.
Nah, they're positive. I'm the most negative guy in all of.
No, you're just the Jimbo lover. That's what people don't like about you. But I don't think you're overly negative. I think your negativity is on point with what this season was. And I think you speak how most fans think. You're worried, right?
You should have read the review. The review that I didn't read. Yeah, I mean, I've seen these before, obviously. It's not news to me. I'm just a cynical person by nature. My thing, though, is we're 5-7, everybody. What do you want me to be?
It's hard to be Mr. Positivity. I wrote that column the other day. I'm not going to say I was cringing when I was writing it, but the end of it was definitely a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Hey, man, I think Willie Taggart can turn it around. I know he can turn it around. I think he will turn it around, but it ain't a guarantee. Nothing from this season makes you think that. Nothing from this season leads me to believe that he's going to turn it around. It's everything from what he's done at previous stops. But if this was his first job, his first year, I'd be like, oh boy, I'm not sure that he should be allowed around football players. But he does have a history of doing well. So it's fun. It's gonna be fun. Gonna be fun. 24 months.
This is the last show of the week. We're probably gonna go to Monday through Thursday from here on out. We're definitely not gonna be doing Friday shows. Actually, I shouldn't say that, but it's our last show for the week. Corey,
unless there's some news tomorrow, and then we could do. If there's some news later on today, then we could do maybe a quick 15-minute
correct yes.
podcast with me on the road or something.
Absolutely. That is absolutely the case. Do you think we'll have a show later in the week? Do you think we'll have a Friday show?
No, I don't.
You don't think it's going to happen?
Not me personally, no, I don't. But I don't know anything. Hugh Freeze hasn't returned a text in at least 30 minutes. So I don't know. I don't know where he's at right now.
All right. I won't let you send us out for the week because it might not be over yet. But if it is, everybody just know that Corey loves all of you.
What about you, man?
You read these comments, people. Let me read this one.
No, I don't want to hear it. And just for people that know, I don't know if we're going to have a Monday show, Aslan, because this guy's going to be in New Orleans.
Right, well, we'll get you on the phone line if they do make it higher. Listen, no matter what happens, everybody, just know this. This is the slow season for us. No days off. That was our mantra from like July on. We're going to start taking a few days off. But when something important happens, we'll flash the bat signal out there. We'll put a show up for you guys and gals.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty to talk about over the next couple of weeks anyway, with signing day coming up, and obviously you got to imagine at least a couple more coaching staff hires. Just this particular Monday, I might be not available unless a hire is made, and then Daddy will talk all day long.
Corey, you got 15 minutes left in you, so we can get to 2 hours.
No, good grief, 2 hours. Oh boy, no, it's longer than Gone with the Wind.
If it made it this far, we really do love you. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch up with you later.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.